Well, Stefan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. And as I've started out most of my questionnaire time with potential counselors, thank you for stepping up. It's certainly a big step. No doubt you had to talk to your family members to see if this is the right step for yourself and for your family. And it's a time commitment, and it's a position of service to the community. So we do thank you for that.
No, thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to put my name for it. It's been a fun couple of weeks, and I'm sure the next couple of weeks are going to be even more fun to getting to hear from all sorts of different residents and different issues. Yeah, looking forward to it. So thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to dive right into the 7 questions. I'm going to ask the 7 questions. I hate asking, like, reading questions when I'm having conversations, but that's what we're going to do just to keep the consistency going. Ask the 7 questions, then we'll go back and we'll dissect some of the things that you said in how
Sure,
you answered
sounds
those
great.
questions. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what motivated you to run for Okotoks Town Council?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Stefan Dykema. I am a proud husband and father of 3 kids, and to be honest, that's the reason I'm running. I wasn't sure. We had lots of conversations, my wife and I, on if I wanted to put my name forward or not. But at the end of the day, I love our town. We moved to Okotoks in 2018, and honestly, it's been the best decision that we've made. Fell in love with the town basically right away, and for me, putting my name forward is really just a continuation of that. It comes out of a place of loving our town and wanting to serve it. I come with quite a bit of different experiences, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point throughout today. But really, for me, it's I'm running to make Okotoks the best possible place that it can be, and I hope that I can leverage some of my previous employment and expertise in a way that's going to benefit the town, not just for right now, but for the future.
Right on. What is your vision for Okotoks over the next 4 years, and what role do you see yourself playing in helping achieve that vision?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, the vision really comes down to having a couple of different things. One is really just focusing on the opportunity that exists, but making sure that we're doing it in a responsible way. Um, when I look at what makes Okotoks unique and special, it really is that small town feel. When I look at myself and my friends and other people that we know within Okotoks, we all kind of moved there for the same reason. It was to have that small town feel and having that really, really strong sense of community. And so for me, that vision is really just continuing lots of the great work that us as a town that we're already doing. Willing to admit, I'm a little apprehensive in terms of that growth piece, as I'm sure lots of residents are. And I remember one conversation I had with a friend of mine that at one point I was very much in favor of, like, no more growth. We want to keep it exactly the same forever and ever. And one of my friends had said to me, like, Stefan, if we don't grow, eventually that growth is just going to happen outside of Okotoks, but we're going to be on the hook for basically everything else. And when I look at the area structure plans, I think for me one of the biggest pieces is making sure that us on council that we get it right, that we don't turn into a town that has crazy amounts of traffic. Which, don't get me wrong, that we have some key areas in town right now that we're already starting to see that. But for me, I think one of the biggest mistakes that council could make is just rubber stamping development and doing it in a way that isn't actually going to benefit residents, and
Mhm.
getting to a spot where that infrastructure isn't on pace. And I mentioned some of the traffic pieces, but it's not just the traffic; it's also the amenities that we have. And I know for me and my family, one of the reasons we love Okotoks is we don't ever have to leave for anything. Everything is right
Right.
there, and that's
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite things. So making sure that from a recreational standpoint, that our kids and our families and our seniors have what they need, that they don't have to look elsewhere. And so for
Mhm.
me, that vision really is making sure that Okotoks continues to be the place that it is, the amazing place that it is, but making sure that we make some really, really thoughtful choices in terms of what the future holds for us.
In your view, what are the top 2 or 3 issues facing Okotoks right now, and how would you approach them if you were elected?
Yeah. So again, I think one that's top of mind for everybody right now is that growth piece.
Mhm.
again, that growth is inevitable. It's going to be coming. And I think when you look at the area structure plans that are there, and you look at some of the projections, I think some of the numbers that we see, when we start looking at, you know, 40,000, then 45,000, and eventually at some point, maybe getting to the 60 to 70,000 range. I think, again, making sure that we're planning appropriately and we're planning responsibly. I know for me, one of the big pressing pieces is especially 32nd, uh, especially when we start looking at a new high school getting built in an area that already is seeing quite a bit of congestion around that time. So I'd really, really, really want to do a deep dive into that area, making sure that as East Wedderburn and all the other development in that area continues to grow, we're not going to be hamstrung with traffic, and that we're actually going to be able to move people where they need to go.
Hmm.
Um, and I think with that is really making sure that we're able to balance not just the residential growth, but also the commercial development piece. And I think in many cases, having that balance is one that would be really, really important to me as counselor, is making sure that we have and are able to leverage all those kind of opportunities to be able to diversify our tax base as well. Um, and with that, that kind of gets into the second pressing point for me, and that really comes down to taxation having fiscal responsibility.
Hmm.
Um, as counselor, I think it's incredibly important that we make prudent decisions, that we're able to invest in our town, not just in the facilities, but also in the programs that our facilities can offer. And one of the pieces that I know is on everyone's mind this day is inflationary pressures. I know for me, as a father and with three young kids, we're feeling that every day with the cost of living going up. Uh, so I think as council, one of the things that we have to do doesn't mean that we're just going to have a blanket. Well, we're going to freeze everything, or we're going to lower taxes, and we can make all these claims that we're going to do things, but the reality is there's lots of service, some amazing service that town employees do each and every day. And so I think for us is really just finding some value investments that we need to make, both on the infrastructure side, but also on the programming side. So I think those for me are the two. Is really how do we continue to make Okotoks the best possible place, not just to live, but also to work.
Yeah, right on. Okotoks continues to face challenges around growth, housing, infrastructure. So you kind of covered that in your last answer. But how do you believe the town should balance development with maintaining its character and livability?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think we're all in agreement that for us, we don't want to just be a suburb of Calgary. We just want to be Okotoks. That's who we are. That's why we all moved there. So I think, especially looking at the air structure plans, the neighborhood plans as well, is one thing that I would do as counselors, making sure that those are fine tuned, and that it really does preserve the feel of what Okotoks is. And a big part of that is having access to green space, having access to parks. And I think one thing that I really would want to focus on is looking at, when we look at some of those recreational places within the municipal plans, making sure that they actually make sense. That when we look at school sites, they're not tag on. Right now, I'll use the high school as an example of that. When we end up having the new high school right along HTA, right along Meadow Ridge, we're going to have to be really, really purposeful with how we're going to be moving that amount of people out of that area. And so I think for me, looking at kind of across the board for all of the different area structure plans, is making sure that we're being really, really thoughtful with how we do those, and not just doing it for what's going to work in the next 2 years or 3 years, but really taking that broader scope and looking at how is traffic going to flow in these areas? How are people going to have accessibility? Not just again in the short term, but in the long term.
Mm, for sure. Many residents want more transparency and involvement in decision making. How would you ensure residents' voices are heard and represented at council?
Yeah. So I think for me, policy development is one that it starts with listening to people. I again in my background, I've been a principal for the past 7 years. Prior to that, I was a management consultant with a large company. And one of the things that we ended up doing in either one of those is really just focusing on listening. And I think oftentimes with policy development in particular, one of the biggest mistakes is consultation happens at the end of the process instead of at the beginning. And so I think for me, that'd be one of the biggest pieces, is making sure that I'm listening to residents and that I'm being proactive. And some of that would come through some more formal mechanisms like surveys and town halls and all of those. But I think also just anecdotally is just, and that's been one of my favorite things of joining the campaign is be able to door knock on people's on their houses and just getting to hear what some of their concerns are. And I think having that pulse of the community is incredibly important. So again, that we're not coming back to people after council's kind of already made up its mind. And I think in terms of that transparency piece, that's one that I hope everyone through this election will see for me is I just want what's best for Okotoks. Not just for myself, but for my kids and for all of our residents. And I know that's everyone's heart as well. So for me, I'm not one that is going to play politics simply for the sake of playing politics. Um, in my master's, I remember one of my profs had talked about how sometimes elected officials forget what their actual role is, and part of that role is to make the difficult decisions. And so for me, um, that is something that I'm putting my name forward to be able to make those decisions, but know that when I do make those decisions, I need to be able to stand by those decisions too.
Mhm.
So that would be that accountability piece for me.
Absolutely. Right on. Town council works as a team and also with Foothills County and the province. How would you approach collaboration and compromise to get results for Okotoks?
Yeah. So, I mean, especially in terms of that collaboration piece, this is something that I I live and breathe every single day in my job.
Mhm.
So working with people is essential to who I am. And I know within municipal politics as well, we're not an island, um, and we have to be able to work with our partners and honestly with all of our different stakeholders. So not just with Foothills County, but obviously working with the provincial government as well. I think for me, um, I would really focus on just developing strong relationships with honestly with everyone. And I think for in terms of those relationships, they're really predicated on having trust and knowing that what we're trying to do is to the benefit of all of our different residents. And my hope is, and what I've seen in my own professional settings as well is really getting into win-win situations. I think sometimes when we look at politics right now, unfortunately, it seems like we get into this zero-sum game where
Mhm.
we have to win, and if we win, that means someone else is going to lose. And I think when I look at the partnership that exists already between the town of Okotoks and Foothills County in particular, it is a really robust and healthy relationship, and that'd be one that I'd want to continue. And then I think from an Alberta government perspective, we know that there's some fairly big initiatives that we're going to need some provincial support. And so from my end as counselor, I would really want to focus on just being a really fierce advocate for our community, and again partnering with the provincial government to make some of those initiatives happen.
Yeah, right on. If residents remember just one thing about you after listening to this conversation, what should it?
Well, I hope it would be that if they voted for me, that they're going to get someone who genuinely cares about our community, cares about our town. Um, I think in terms of my key focuses, one of them is again just managing that growth piece. But there's a couple of different aspects to my platform. Um, Big part of that is making sure that we're being responsible and we're being fiscally prudent with our money, with our taxes. And for me, is really making sure that we're having value driven investments within our community. And with that comes just being able to increase and diversify our tax base. And so I mentioned a little bit in terms of being able to bring in more businesses. I think when we look at some of the different air structure plans that exist and be able to diversify our tax base, I think is going to be really important. So that way the burden doesn't all fall on residences and residential or residents within Okotoks. Um, and I think the big piece too is for me, I would say the one thing I would want people to remember at least is if you do vote for me, you're going to get someone that again cares about the community, but that is going to make the right decisions. And sometimes that
Mhm.
does mean that we're going to have to make hard decisions. Um, but the reality is that's why we have council. Why we have democracy in general is that people can actually make those hard decisions in obviously consultation with engagement with residents and citizens. But
Mhm.
I hope that people would see that for me, that they can trust me to make the best decision for the town.
Yeah, right on. So, did you happen to see like uh Do you feel that there's a little bit of a lack with the direction of the town right now that you felt the need to step up to put your name forward? Did you feel that maybe we were heading in or are heading in a wrong direction?
I wouldn't say wrong direction. I think the one piece that I'm again that I'm a I don't say I'm cognizant of, that I'm reflective on is when I start looking at the new developments, and I'm willing to admit I'm a bit of a policy nerd. I love reading documents, but simply to be able to read them. And so when I started looking at like the area structure plans, one of the things that really struck me was just honestly how we're going to be able to move people, and just the amount of intersections that are going to exist throughout the town. And I'm worried that as development happens, that we're going to make decisions that are just based off of the here and now. That we're going to take the easy decision to be able to make something happen,
Mhm.
and then in 15 years from now, 20 years from now, we're going to look and be like, oh my gosh, why did we make that decision? If only we would have taken the time to actually be able to get it done right,
Mhm.
as opposed to just getting it done. And I think for me that is a big piece. When I looked at the other counselors that, or the candidates that were willing to put their name forward, I I saw a need within, even with my own family, to be able to have that voice, um, of just a father with three young kids. That when I look at, even simple things like being able to get into swimming lessons and the difficulty that sometimes can happen there, just having a voice on council that's going to represent not just those families with young families, but for all residents.
Yeah, right on. So it sounds like you've looked at the area structure plan. And full disclosure, I have not.
Okay.
I need to find it.
It's really
I'm
great reading.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm not a policy nerd. I should become a little bit of a policy nerd. So you mentioned that it seemed like there was a few red flags that popped up when you. Am I safe to suggest that one of your concerns is just the movement and flow of traffic? Is that correct? Was there anything else that kind of stuck out as potential issues? Like, you also talked about industry, like, and bringing in new businesses. Do you feel that there's enough room on that area structure plan for businesses and bringing in industry into the town?
Yeah, I think there is. I think that's the piece. Like when I look at the Thunderstone Junction plan, and that's for a mix between some commercial and industrial. I think there's lots of really good opportunity to be able to grow those areas over time. But I think it will take the right people to be able to get some of those projects done, and to actually be able to drive business into our community. Um, but I think the core would be making sure that when we make those decisions, whether it's on the business investment side, or even in terms of the traffic, the traffic's only one element of that puzzle. I think the piece is looking at even things like walkability and accessibility within
Hmm.
communities. I know for us where we live, like we we love being able to walk everywhere and having access to bike paths, and having
Hmm.
be able to go wherever we want to within town, and be able to just hop on our bikes. And so I think even in terms of that piece for all families and with those new communities, is making sure that we do have that mix. And I know every every town has some of those struggles, but I think that's the key for us is not just doing what other towns do, but making sure that we're making the decisions that are right for us as Okotoks, and really preserving that feel, in terms of what makes Okotoks special. So it's not just the traffic; it's really looking at the more granular details, even in terms of the neighborhood plans, and
Hmm.
making sure that we get those right. But every community that comes online is an amazing community.
For sure. When we do look at trying to sell our town to new industry, new businesses to come, like, do you have any ideas as to a way that you would lure new companies, new business, or sell our town? Like, have you thought about that at all?
I have thought a little bit, yeah, and there's a couple of different pieces. Like I think one is just really trying to strengthen just the business environment within Okotoks in general. Um, I think we're already starting to see this in the south, that we're starting to see more and more businesses join and grow in the south. I think eventually when the north comes online, a big part of that will be, just creating the space and having lots of opportunities for businesses to be able to grow. I think for me, one of the pieces that I would definitely want to be able to look into, and I'm willing to admit quite have the data yet in terms of that piece. If elected, I'm sure there'd be lots of people that'd be able to provide that. But really looking at, what are the barriers for businesses to be able to join and grow in Okotoks. I know collectively within Alberta, some small businesses, they talk about permitting being an issue, or even just some of the municipal charges on things like natural gas or electricity. So I think from my end, really trying to fine tune the ability to make Okotoks an attractive place to be able to invest in. At one point in my life, I was a small business owner, and so I understand those pressures that come, and sometimes those small things can either take up a lot of time or they can take up a lot of resources. And so I think just, yeah, from my end, really trying to create a culture where businesses want to invest in Okotoks.
Yeah. With your experiences in the past, you mentioned that before. Like, how do you feel that your life experiences that you're bringing in from being a small business owner, being in management, now a principal, will help you lead this town?
Yeah, great question. So I think honestly, for me, I feel like all those different experiences are really kind of intersecting for me into
Hmm.
this one role. I As you said, my experiences are kind of all over the place. So from a principal side, just that ability to be able to put people first is something that you kind of have to do in a school setting each and every day. And I think
Hmm.
on council that would be the same. Is just making sure that when we make decisions that it's actually going to benefit people. And inevitably there is that political game that kind of plays out. But at the end of the day, is making sure that we're putting people before politics would be really important to me. And I think for me as a counselor, like one of my experiences when I was a management consultant, I specialized primarily in public organizations. So I actually wrote or co-wrote the change management plan for municipal affairs when the new MGA came out in 2000, what was that, 15ish. And so have a wide variety of different experiences from that management consulting lens, I was able to take really, really big issues, and us and our team were able to synthesize those and actually take big ideas and put them into practice and be able to operationalize them. So I think when I look at all those different experiences, I really do feel like they culminate into this role.
Hmm.
And
Right
again,
on.
the hope would be that I would make those decisions that um, are going to leave Okotoks in a better place at the end of my term.
Right. Awesome. So we talked a bit about growth, and then when you're kind of laying out your platform, you also said talked about responsibility and being responsible with, I guess, good stewards of what the town is receiving. How do you uh, project yourself leading town council in regards to taxation? And because no doubt there's going to be times you're going to have to increase the taxes in your 4-year term, or whatever. How do you go about communicating? Obviously it sounds like you want to keep taxes low. I don't, not too many people are going to run on a platform that we're going to we're going to increase taxes, we're going to move forward. What are your thoughts and feelings towards right now the feel towards taxes in?
Yeah, I mean, let me put it this way. I think taxes they obviously serve a purpose, and I think that's their the revenue that comes from taxes. The town obviously utilizes in some really good ways. But I think for me, yeah, having low taxes is always going to be a good thing, because as soon as we increase taxes, all we're doing is taking money out of people's pockets. And with the amount of young families and seniors that are in Okotoks, that would be the last thing that I would want to do is, just willy nilly say, hey, we're going to increase taxes, but not actually have a reason as to why we're doing that. And so for me, and I see this in my professional responsibilities is the, there's scarce resources. And so what I would want to do on council is really making sure that we're making prudent financial investments and decisions that when we are going to spend money, that it actually has value to it. That we wouldn't be a council that would have pet projects or ideas that were like, well, maybe this will work, maybe this won't work, but we won't know till we try. I think for me, like there's a very robust process that we would have to put into place to make sure that again that we're getting value for our money, and that value doesn't mean that we won't spend money, right? I think about some of the even simple things like having bike paths cleared in the winter. I,
Hmm.
I love that, right? I
Yeah.
love that for me and my family, we can walk year round and we can access the amazing parks within Okotoks. And that's an investment that I think most people in Okotoks would say, yeah, that's a great choice in terms of how we end up using money. Um, but I think for me, yeah, it's just making sure that what we end up doing is smart, and that it, for residents that is actually going to provide value to them.
Yeah. Right on. No, and I think that the average person, if they're paying higher taxes, they probably don't care if they feel like they're getting that value for their higher taxes, right? Like I was the example that I use is St. Albert, just north of Edmonton. There, they pay extremely high taxes, but a lot of people want to live there because of the value that they're receiving in there. Now, being really close to Edmonton, they probably get a little bit more industry and more tax, help that way. But that is that's more so just a comment. Um, when you are door knocking and talking to Okotokians, is there anything else that you're hearing about on the street? Any other concerns that people are talking to you about?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, the biggest one right now that I think is top of mind for everyone is that growth piece. I think when you're driving, especially in the north side of town or on the west, and you see lots of earth getting moved, and you're starting to see houses come up, there's a certain apprehension that
Hmm.
comes with that. And again, I think when we look at the amenities, not just the traffic piece, when we start looking at the recreational piece and the programs that exist, is making sure that as Okotoks grows, that we don't lose that quality of life that is robust, and that's amazing. And I think
Hmm.
that's the biggest piece that when I go door knocking, what I hear from people is they love our town. They want to keep our town for basically ourselves, but they understand that growth is in many ways inevitable. But really making sure that we don't lose sight of what makes our town special. And I think that's the piece for me is again making sure that infrastructure and the programs are there to be able to help support people now and make sure that they can actually access those things. But not just now, but in the future as well.
Yeah, I honestly think that, and I've said this time and time again with other people that I've interviewed. Like, let's say this new growth that was transpiring was south of town, and everybody, because we're a bedroom community, people are always driving north. People are always driving north to Calgary. Would never see it if they never saw it. That it would, it probably this growth issue would not be as big of an issue if it didn't affect them, right? And it's when people get when the growth impedes their drive time to work in Calgary or even in Okotoks, driving kids to school and all that stuff. That's when the frustrations begin. And I do think that, yeah, 32nd. You mentioned the high school, the new high school, the elementary school, and up to junior high, and now the pickleball courts being built. Even a double 32nd is going to be nasty.
Yeah, and I think that's the piece for me is just making sure that we're making those right choices. So when we're looking at school sites, it's not something that's like, oh, we got funding for a high school. Where
Hmm.
if we put it? Let's put it here.
Yeah.
We can make those plans, 5, 10, 15 years in advance, and then we actually know that it's going to work, right? Where
Hmm.
we're not now racing to be like, oh, we have to twin 32nd, or oh well, we really should have a whole bunch of intersections to make sure we can move people through here. Like that's the piece for me that that long-term planning piece is going to be really, really, really important for us to be able to do, because I'm willing to admit from a policy side, like I hate knee-jerk reactions when it comes to policy development or for governments. I
Hmm.
think that's the piece where we just have to be proactive, because
Yeah.
we can see this coming. It's by the time we
Yeah.
see the earth moving and the machinery showing up on site, like there's been years of planning that have gone into those sites before. So
Yeah.
just making sure that we're making those choices, making the right
Mm.
choice.
No, for sure. No, and you can probably do a little bit of diving into it as to where I was and where I grew up and all that stuff. And but I won't mention here because some people might be offended. But I really wanted my kids growing up in a place that they loved and they could be proud of. and we ended up in Okotoks, and I do believe my kids love Okotoks. Now that it seems like everybody kind of hits that phase when they, out of high school, college is where Okotoks isn't the cool place to be because there's nothing to do or whatever. But it's the very place that they bring their kids back to raise, right? So a lot of people do leave for a reason, for a time, college years and all that stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm never, never going to move back or whatever. But they start having babies, they start having a family, and they want to live here because it is a great town. And Stefan, that's something that is very evident through my one half of an hour with you that you do love this town. And that's awesome. And I appreciate you stepping up, and really appreciate the things you said today. So,
Yeah. Well, thanks again for having me. It was a blast.
yeah. Anything else? Anything else you want to say just to wrap things up to the viewers, or do you think I
No,
think people
honestly, I think the biggest thing is come October 20th is just go out and vote. Choose the candidate that you think is going to be that's going to work for you and work for the town. But I'd say the biggest thing is just make sure that for every person that lives in Okotoks is to go out and vote.
Yeah. No, that's a good word. I've heard that the last election was 36%. Um, and it's really weird. Like I heard that number and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. I know it's not good, but it's I was surprised that it was that high, right? And no, that's awesome. So thank you for your time. Appreciate you. And I will look forward to seeing you on the 24th.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Okay. Take care.